Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Pardonable Podcast. I'm your host, David Lilly, and this week I thought I might do something fun, um, and hash something that I used to do way back in the day and haven't done in a long time. And it's called Pop Art Review. So basically, I take popular culture stuff like movies and TV shows and stuff that's coming out, and I review it with my extremely intelligent artistic taste and tell you what I like and what I didn't like about it and spoil all the endings and all that good stuff. So and sometimes I have guests on with me, and we kind of go over, and it's a good time. But this time, it's just me, and I thought it would be a cool time. I'm going to talk about Antman and the Wasp: Quantumania. I know that came out a while back. I never got around to reviewing it, and so I was like, well, I'll throw that on there. Tell you what I liked and what I didn't like about it. I'm also going to review The Last of Us, which is a TV show that came out recently. The season finale aired Sunday, so I'm going to tell you my thoughts on that one, and then of course, The Mandalorian, which has aired 2 episodes so far. And the third one will be airing this Wednesday. Might be the day this comes out. I'm not sure, but so I had a little bit of time on my hands. It's a pretty snowy day here in upstate New York, and so got some art stuff done. I was like, I haven't done one of these pop art review episodes, so why don't I do that and just share with you my thoughts on that stuff that came out. Um, and one of the reasons I thought about this too, I was like, one of the reasons I probably should throw one of these in there. Number one, because this is stuff I really enjoy, obviously. But also because it seems like every week the world is ending. I know not the world is ending, but it seems like there's always something happening that's horrifically bad. Something like a train derailment that's polluting the waters all down the Mississippi, or this week it's banks just collapsing and falling in, and we don't know what to do. Should I buy Bitcoin? Should I not buy Bitcoin? Should I pull my money out of the bank? Which bank is it? Pardon me. Is this just the start of a complete collapse? Who knows? On top of all the other cool stuff like World War III and whatever pandemic's going to come out after that, and whatever political mumbo jumbo is happening that's making everybody mad or whatever, all the important things. I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to take a step back and talk about all the other things that kind of make us feel like the world's not going to end, by talking about shows where the world did end. And so I thought that'd be a good time. So anyway, um, let's talk about Quantumania. Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. Um, oh, spoilers ahead, by the way. I'm going to spoil these shows like nobody's business. So if you haven't seen them, oops, you don't have to listen. You can come back and listen to it later after you like and subscribe. So I I here I'll start off with Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'll start off with saying this. I love the Ant-Man movies. 1 and 2. And I liked 3, Quantumania. I think I went into it with my hopes a little high, which I've kind of done with every Marvel movie and TV show that's come out since like Phase 4, which was Spider-Man, Far From Home or something like that. All of these movies, and I talked about this I think it was the last time I did one of these. Maybe I mentioned it. So, and just so people listening, they don't know, Marvel does these phases, and each phase kind of builds up to, the next phase and who the next big, bad guy is. And then they normally end with like an Avengers, where they all the heroes and all the movies, they all come together in some way, form, fashion to fight that guy. And then there's a whole nother episode where they start to move on other things. So we've been through all of Phase 4, and we just started with Ant-Man Quantumania at Phase 5. I was super excited. Matter of fact, I had super high hopes for Phase 4 because at the end of Phase 3 was Endgame, which was like a giant movie where all your favorite superheroes came together to fight Thanos. Iron Man dies, spoiler alert. Captain America, grows old through time travel. It's a whole big thing. You need to be there. But then all of Phase 4 was kind of a wrap up, and I noticed this, like Spider-Man Far From Home was kind of a salute and sign off, like a secondary sign off for Iron Man. The whole episode kind of had to deal with that, and kind of Spider-Man being on his own without Captain America or Thor. And then you had Black Widow, which is a sign off to Black Widow because she died. And then, we had a few other movies. I think, the WandaVision was a lot about Vision's death. It was a lot of these shows that kind of highlighted all the people we lost in the past phases, especially Phase 3. And all of them I thoroughly enjoyed. What was the, even Captain Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was a big sign off to Captain America. Had a lot to do with Captain America. They all kind of made it feel complete, the ending of these people's stories. And then you had a few other things like the What If series, TV series that came out. Loki was phenomenal. I thought Loki was a weird one where it signed off on Loki, but rebought him back. But in Loki that came out, it started to build up to like the tension of like, okay, we're going to get the next Thanos. Like this is going to be like the multiverse. And we kept being winked at. So Loki kind of had like this multiverse feel. Who's coming back? What are we doing with this? The What If series brought in the idea of multiverses. And then you had Spider-Man No Way Home, which brought in like all the other Spider-Mans, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield from the other Spider-Man movies. They come together in one. It's mind-blowing. You're like, okay, we're cracking the thing. We're going to get this weird new universe where it's multiple universes. And then we knew Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was coming out. And that was the one. I know it was still Phase 4, but I was like, this is going to take Loki. It's going to take Spider-Man. It's going to take all these movies that were being winked at. Even Shang-Chi had a little bit of that multiverse feel with the very end post-credit scenes where like it's Bruce Banner and Captain Marvel, and they're talking about like, what are these rings? Where they come? It's a beacon to something else, which I think we found out in Quantumania, sort of. It didn't really go into that, but all of them were winking at this idea that we're moving and we're starting to connect them together. But the big problem I had with Phase 4 is they never completed. They fell flat. Like every time you're like, especially, I was really hopeful because that was like towards the end of Phase 4 was Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. It's in the name of the title. We're going to get some multiversal stuff. We're going to hear about Loki. Loki might even be in it. Obviously, Spider-Man is probably going to come. We're going to get this tie-in where they start to show up in each other's movies and it's a cohesive story. That's all I really wanted out of this, is because all the other phases kind of felt cohesive. All the other team players started showing up and in other people's movies, and you start to get this one big combined story, which was what I thought was great about the Marvel series, is because you had all these little pockets of stories, but they all winked and kind of nudged and moved forward to one big one. And then Phase 4 happened where it felt like all these pocket stories, and none of them even connected. Like they're all about the same thing, but no one called each other. Like you're like, hey, you dealing with the multiverse? Yeah, I'm dealing with it. No one did that. I mean, sort of the Doctor Strange and Spider-Man one. That was about the closest we got to being like, well, at least two people know about this thing going on. And so I had a few complaints about that, but lo and behold, wait it out. Phase 5 is coming. We're gonna get it all to come together, which it kind of did. And so I was pretty happy about that. Finally, we get some cohesion, and that cohesion part was the Quantumania and Kang the Conqueror, which, if you don't know, if you didn't watch Loki and the idea of variants, there's this one character who's actually from the future, and winked out because it's Reed Richards' descendant down the line, which is Mr. Fantastic from Fantastic Four, who was John Krasinski, Jim from The Office, in Multiverse of Madness. I'm hoping he comes back. I think he was the best character for, and I hate the Fantastic Four. I think it's a garbage idea. Write that one down. Put that in the comments of how much you don't like me now. Always never like Fantastic Four, even just as basic comic book characters, not the movies. Just thought it was dumb. Stretchy arms, not really. That's, you guys stuck with that one. Anyway, Reed Richards, super smart too, by the way. Anyway, his descendant, Nathaniel Richards, figures out multiverse. And all of his multiversal characters figured out because they're super smart. And then they all start figuring out how to cross over and then fight each other. Like first they collab and then they start fighting each other. And then all the multiverses they're jumping universes and dimensions to get to each other to fight each other. And that's kind of the basic concept that you got in Loki, that we knew Kang was coming up. Well, Kang's there. He's in the Quantumania. He's in the quantum realm. And that's kind of where they go back to. So without going into a giant long, because you've probably seen it, you don't need me to regurgitate the whole storyline. So I'm just going to tell you the things I liked about it. I'm going to start off with the good stuff. I am happy that it's somewhat cohesively bringing the story together. Obviously, we know Kang, who's the evil villain in this one, is going to be, or some version of him or versions of him are going to be the big bad, right? This is the Thanos of the next whatever. So I did like that. Finally, it feels like we're moving the ball forward instead of just fireworks shooting off in distances and no one knows about them. The other thing that I really dug about Quantumania, and this one I dug, but I kind of got lost in it. And so artistically, the way it was done, we've visited the quantum realm before. Scott's been there. You know, we've been there before. He was there during the whole infinity thing, the 5-year snap, and we've seen glimpses of it. And what we kind of got from it was a little bit, and this is how I described it. This movie made it not so ethereal like Doctor Strange, like kind of weird off into space. It was a little bit more Guardians. You got to meet alien creatures that are in the quantum realm that live in there. And the quantum realm is basically like minuscule, like you shrink because Antman, you can shrink down to tiny. He shrinks down into like quantum matter and atoms and stuff. So he's like super tiny. So honestly, the whole entire movie takes place in one little tiny, if you think about it that way. Like the tip of a pencil, like that's the whole movie happens on that, in some weird theory. But either way, there's aliens, there's whole people that live in the quantum realm. I thought that was really cool, the way they did the scenery and the way it was kind of just orbs floating, and it was very colorful and kind of cool. It felt very alien, like Guardians of the Galaxy, like we're visiting someplace we've never been, but it was also kind of jumbled. It didn't really feel like one planet. It felt like a fever dream, and so everything was kind of all over the place. And whereas a lot of those alien movies, you kind of get, or at least Doctor Strange, you dip into, like this weird ethereal realm, and it's kind of cool and artsy and colorful, and you don't really know what's up and what's down. But then you come back into like a spaceship in the Guardians, and so things start to kind of feel a little bit more stable, a little bit. Oh, I know what this is. And then you go to a different planet, and you're like, okay, it's kind of weird. And then you go and in something that's a little familiar. This movie really didn't spend any time except for in the quantum realm, so nothing's really familiar. It's all kind of all over the place, and it's all kind of just, there's just nothing to ground you. It's just a weird realm. Now, artistically, I thought it was super cool because they did a lot of fun with the idea of what life would be like in the quantum realm. And so you have these buildings that are actually alive, that move. You have these aliens that are just different, like blobs and orbs, and there's no real boundary. And I think they use that, like they run from a giant flaming orb. You don't really know what it's going to do, but it's kind of bad, but you're not sure. And so they play with that, and I like that. But one thing, even as an artist, this is where I'm going to get artsy with you. I don't like super explorative art. I never really liked absurdism, which is a whole style of art of just, the point of that art is to be absurd, to make it not make sense, to make it's almost ridiculing the ideal. And I'm not even a big fan of like super abstract stuff and kind of wonky depictions of things that don't make sense, that don't really play. I think a good point of art is to take some boundary that and kind of play with the boundary, but use the boundary as a catalyst to kind of make it mean something to you, not just this piece has no meaning. I don't really even think that's good art. I think pieces that don't really have a meaning other than to not have a meaning, it's kind of garbage. It's just my thoughts out there. And so any kind of art piece that's just like, well, we can do whatever we want, there's no boundaries, you lose the whole point. You don't feel connected to it. It feels like something that's beyond even comprehension. And then if you have something that doesn't really make sense, like, yeah, I get it's a quantum realm, you can have fun with it. You don't really know what to do. You don't really know what you're playing with. You don't really know what to do with it. So you're kind of along for the ride, but there's no real connection. And that's a long version of what I thought. Very artsy, very cool. They do play into a storyline in the plot. There's like Kang, he's the evil conqueror. He's taken over. It's basically like the evil empire, and then you have the rebellion, very Star Wars-esque kind of concepts, and so the plot line kind of follows that along with a separate one. And I'll get into that in a minute. But I did want to talk about the artsy. I thought it was cool. A lot of Guardians, a lot of Doctor Strange vibe, but the only thing is you can't really separate it. It just felt like a fever dream, and that, that's all right. Sure. It's a new thing. Maybe I'm just old school, but either way, that's what I thought about that. I think let's talk about the character, because I want to go into plot. I'm going to talk about the characters, and this is why I like the Ant-Man series a lot. And this one I think I liked the least out of all of them. One of the best parts about the Ant-Man series is its practicality. I know it sounds weird talking about a guy who hits a button and he gets big and then small. But the whole thing was, the whole concept wasn't like he got magic power. He's a normal guy, a heist guy, right? So he breaks into things he steals. He's a robber. That's the whole point of the first and second movie. It's all based around him being, a thief. And then he gets this technology, and then he has to struggle with the idea of fighting for good, even if it's going to risk his, probation or whatever. And it's a whole good character development because he's just a normal guy. He's just trying to do good with what talents he has, and then he finds himself in the suit. But he's also extremely charismatic. He's funny. He's lighthearted. There's serious moments in most of them, but they never get super serious, except for when it's family oriented. And he's got a young daughter, and he cares for her, and he's divorced from his wife, and she's remarried, but they have this relationship where he's still kind of fun and cordial. They just built it to where you really like Scott Lang. Like that's Antman, Scott Lang. You really enjoy his character. Matter of fact, he's one of my favorite characters of the whole universe. Not because Paul Rudd is just a genius. Anyway, I love Paul Rudd as an actor in general, but just because his character is just so heartwarming, and almost as if he could do no wrong. And on top of that, he's naturally funny. And then they always had the funny, like the funny side characters, his buddies who were, trying to do what's right and start a business where they help people protect their property since they're all thieves and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. They did him okay in this movie. It was all right. Let me say this. There were so many main characters. You had him, these are all the people that went to Quantum Realm. Him, Cassie, Hope Van Dyne. I'm blanking on the mom, and Hank Pym. So basically, all of them, the whole Brady bunch, go to the Quantumania. I can't believe I forgot her name, but I'm thinking about a lot of things at once. And they split off when they get there. So there's just a lot of people. And then there's on top of that, there's not just one. We need to get back. No, we need to defeat Kang. We need to help these people. We need to find this thing. We need to not sacrifice this. We need to find each other. There was just a lot going on. Like not only was the world not cohesive, the game plan wasn't. Maybe it was on purpose. They're like, we just want them to feel lost. And I did. So worked. Good job. Felt lost most of the movie. But because they had so many characters, it was hard to do any kind of real more character development. You kind of get Scott's and Cassie, his daughter's relationship. She's getting older. She, is being rebellious. She's also super smart. And so she's getting into tech, and that's kind of how they end up in this whole mess. And he's just trying to protect her and save her. But also there was that weird thing of being like, well, he lost all this time with her, so he wants to spend more time with her. Or is he trying to time travel? Again, a little bit lost on that thing. But then you have Hope Van Dyne and the Wasp. Either way, and they're all separate, and they're all doing their own thing. And it's just, there's just a lot of characters, a lot of what they want. And there was no single unifying, like, this is what we're trying to get to. And so I thought the writing on that was a little bit weird. Unless everyone else, I'm not even going to go into those other people. Kang, on the other hand, was wonderful. I think Kang is great. I think Jonathan Majors is the actor, and he played the guy in Loki, the He Who Remains, which is just another version of him. And there were two different kinds of characters, even though it's the same guy playing the same variant of the same character. And I think it was one. I think he did a great job. You start at the beginning, you start to kind of be like, because even in Loki, I kind of liked He Who Remains, which is a variant of Kang. I kind of liked them. And so even at the beginning of this, you start to kind of go, okay, maybe this guy's not too bad. Maybe they're going to pull like something bad happened to him, and then he turns evil. But then you find out he's evil all along. He's just a good actor, or even his character is a good actor. And I think they did him well. And I think he's just a good actor to portray somebody that's pretty evil. And so no qualms with Kang in this one. There's two other characters that were side characters that I didn't like much at all. And so I'm going to talk about the one I really hated this storyline, and I get its comic relief. MODOK. And so MODOK is a comic book character. I actually have a comic of when MODOK appears. And MODOK it's just a goofy character. It's like a giant head. He floats around his arms, but he's super evil. And they retconned the guy from the first movie and made him go misshapen into the quantum realm. And then they just made him silly, man. They made him super silly. And so silly that I would say they jumped the shark with this one. They jumped the silly shark. It was so ridiculously silly. And I get it was supposed to be like, that's the lighthearted. Like, that's the goofy friends that are always making quips and talking real fast. And I just didn't buy it. I didn't buy it at all. He felt so pathetic. And it was not silly or funny. It was sad. It was horrifically depressing what they did to this character, and it felt like, well, let's just toss the deep fan base a bone by throwing MODOK in there. Not only was his character set, I didn't even like the graphics. The way they did his face felt weird. The uncanny valley thing threw me off. It did not feel right. None of it. None of it, his character. And then even towards the end, they give him a redemption arc. Number one, the guy wasn't likable in the first movie, wasn't likable in the first half of the movie. And then at the end, you're trying to get him. But even then, his death was ultra pathetic. His redemption line was pathetic. They really made him into a pathetic character. And I thought that was super weird. Um, Super pathetic character. So I'm not a fan of MODOK. Almost wish they didn't even put him in there, but I don't know. Just wasn't a big fan of them. The other character they threw in, and I was expecting a lot more, and was highly disappointed, was Bill Murray's character. You brought Bill Murray into the MCU. Like, I knew about this before I saw the movie. Super stoked. Like, yes, this is one of the things I've always wanted. Bill Murray, MCU. Bring Antman, even better, because Antmans are always kind of funny. That's comical. It's like a Thor Ragnarok. There's always some cool quips. And it felt kind of Thor Ragnarok-y. He felt like Jeff Goldblum's character. Very similar to that, like a guy who's got it all together and he's kind of goofy. They just didn't do it right. Something didn't feel right about it. And he was in it for such a short period of time. And I get it, like maybe they didn't want to, it's Disney. I don't know how they couldn't afford Bill Murray to be in it more. They could have given him a better plot line. He's the guy that was a part of the rebellion. Then when everyone left the Quantumania and then they come back, he's now part of the bad guys because he got bought off or something. Super weird. Wish I would have done more with that. And that's all I'll say about Bill Murray. Wish he could have stuck around. And at least maybe they'll bring him back and build his character up more. Didn't get a lot of him. Wish I would have got more. It's Bill Murray. Why wouldn't you want more of Bill Murray? He could have really led this thing. You could have got rid of MODOK and all that time he was in there, just throwing Bill Murray. I would have been happy with that. I'm going to talk about one other thing about this real quick while we're on characters. There's this whole part, and if you saw this movie, you were like, oh, David, what's the big deal? It's, the 21st century. But there's this, and I get it, it's a bit realistic, but it's something that felt like a little bit of a letdown and early on. So you find out, not Hope, why am I blanking on Michelle Pfeiffer, the mom and Hank Pym, they have a daughter, Hope Van Dyne. She's been in the quantum realm for like 20 years, while everybody else has been in the real world. And they lead to the idea that she was kind of, they didn't lead to it. They mentioned it with Hank Pym right there. Like they're talking to Bill Murray's character. She was romantically involved with Bill Murray. Sorry, middle of snowstorm. A little blip in power. But anyway, back to what I was saying. That part, I didn't really mind. Even Hank was like, it was a long time. And, I'm sure he dated or whatever. And that, I get it. Like sure, it makes sense. It's a bit realistic. You don't think you're ever going to see your partner again, so you kind of move on. Sure, it makes sense, but it's a Marvel movie. You don't always have to be that realistic, especially when you have a guy like MODOK floating around. So I wish I would have went a little bit more, been like not leaned. Sure, you could have let fan theories, but to feed into it kind of made the whole her coming back out of the quantum realm kind of killed that. It kind of made it not so special when they meet up, like, oh my God, I missed you so much. That whole thing where they reunite after years and he thought she was dead and lost forever. And she was like, I'm never coming back. And now when I look back and I rewatch that movie, I'm going to be like, okay, sure. Just didn't mean as much anymore. Anyway, that might be my own personal thing. I'll talk to it. I'll dwell on that and assume I might be the only one, but that part bugged me. Other than that, everything else seemed all right. Still a fun movie. I guess my favorite part was probably the end. Make sure I didn't skip anything. Yeah, I mean, I think the end kind of left off. So there's a few things, a few post credits. Let me talk about the one I like the most when everybody comes back, and even Scott's like, yeah, everything's hunky dory, everything's fine, because I'm assuming he knows something bad's going to happen. That whole Kang thing. Maybe Kang's going to show up again, and so I think the whole thing was a bit menacing. He was like, "Yeah, life's good," but there's something still I'm worried about, and I thought that was kind of a cool kind of made you on suspense. Like, he knows something bad is in the background. He knows there's something bad out there that's eventually going to show up and come after him. And I thought that was good. Like, I like that part. And then the post-credit scene where you have the theater of Kang / Ricks. I know Rick and Morty kind of stole it from the concept, but there's the end credit scene where all of the Kangs are brought together into one arena, and they're all like, what are we going to do about the one that we banished and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. You kind of lined up, and I'm assuming all of the big bads from here on out are going to be versions of this Kang. And there's like a ton of them. So I'm curious to see how they do it. There's 3 main ones, so I'm curious to see how this goes. Thought that was neat, but really my favorite post-credit part was Loki, when they brought him in, and finally we're getting like a good mix of storytelling combining. And so the other post-credit scene is Loki and Owen Wilson's character Mobius, and I love the fact that they have him in that. I love Owen Wilson's character in Loki. But they have him, and they're obviously time traveling with the TVA, because they have I'm assuming they're doing that, and they're looking at one of the Kang versions, and it's like a 1920s version, and he's an inventor, Mr. Timely. And so they just teed up Loki season 2, and I'm all for it. I think, and I've heard other podcasters and stuff talk about this. I think Loki is really gonna carry this one through. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping that they finally start to combine these. Loki shows up, and the next Doctor Strange, all of them, the Guardians of the Galaxy, everything starts to kind of combine and meld, and we're moving towards a central goal where they all team up again. Anyway, that's my theories upon that. The other thing I want to mention too, and I thought this was cool. I actually wrote notes down because there's a lot to talk about, and I was like, I don't want to miss anything, because I did that before, and I was like, oh, I should have asked that. Anyway, the other cool thing, and I did do this. So there's a book in the whole movie. Scott Lang writes a book called "Look Out for the Little Guy," Antman. So it's funny. And then I found out there's actually a physical book that you can pre-order on Amazon, and so I'm going to pull it up. So you can actually go to Amazon.com right now and order this book. Look Out for the Little Guy. This is the Kindle edition. The hardcover is $23.99. It's literally like buying the book out of the movie. So if you haven't noticed, let me pull the screen back. I always wear t-shirts from, like, I've a lot of time. You probably can't see them because I'm wearing flannel or a hoodie, but I love collecting stuff from movies. Again, but a lot, I have a Patty's Pub t-shirt from It's Always Sunny. I have a Binford Tools t-shirt I got for Christmas from Tool Time. I have a Moira Rose, The Crows Have Eyes. Like, I love film stuff that I can bring in and into my personal life. So I thought it would be great to have Scott Lang's book up on my shelf. So I pre-ordered it. But anyway, you can do the same thing if you're really into these. I didn't know about it till my wife pointed out. She's like, you can actually order this book. And I was like, getting it. So that's cool. I have no idea when I'm going to get it. And hopefully I'll get it before the world ends. But anyway, on to The Last of Us. Let me flip through my notes. All sophisticated, like crumple that one up because it's cool. Anyway, so just a heads up with The Last of Us. I'm not a big gamer. There's a few games that I like that I'll play, but I don't really stick with them very often. The Last of Us was a game I definitely didn't play, so I have no idea. But the show, which is based off the movie, was pretty awesome. I definitely like it, and so I'm going to spoil some parts and break it down. But I thought it was a cool rendition, similar to, because it's post-apocalyptic, similar to like The Walking Dead. But I thought they actually did a better job with what I think the world would do when it comes to like a virus outbreak. Number one, I know it's built off a game, so I'm not kidding myself here. I know where they get their inspiration from, and I know the storyline is obviously not the show. But the idea that instead of it just being like a weird contagion virus that somehow makes zombies, they really lean into the idea that, it's this fungus parasite which actually exists that can actually take over the brain of, small insects and animals and control their brain as a parasite on top of them, which is a common thing in science. And they just turn and be like, well, if the the world warms up to a certain degree, we could see these actually expanding because they can't live in something that is higher than like a 95-degree body rate or whatever temperature of a body. They don't survive there. But if the world warms up and they evolve, they could actually infect bigger animals and humans alike. And so that's the whole basis, is this fungi parasite starts to, every time they bite you, it spreads its parasite into your body, kind of like trichinosis. I don't know if you heard about that, but either way, so it's a parasite that affects your brain. So you don't actually die. You just start to be controlled by this mushroom fungus thing. And of course, the artist in me I love how Resident Evil style they go with, instead of it just being like zombies with skulls and arms and flesh hanging up, it's actually like mushrooms growing out. A bit of like Pirates of the Caribbean, the way the shells and the coral started to grow on bodies on Davy Jones's ship. The longer they were there, it's kind of like that. The longer you have this fungus, you're alive. It's keeping you alive, but it's controlling you. It's part of a hive mind as well. So if you step on like a root of the fungus, it sends signals to these cordyceps inside the brain of the host, and they all come running. I don't think they're any faster they're just controlled by parasites. So they're running at full adrenaline kind of thing. And they're horrifically scary looking. I love it because it's like fungus coming out. They're disfigured. It's as far as horror movies, and I love horror movies, obviously. And so as far as scary stuff goes, like I like The Walking Dead. This is right up my alley. So automatically sold. Loved the show. Thought it was really well done. Thought it really played into like The Walking Dead does with relationships and how society is supposed to function, the way that government kind of took over in certain ways, the way rebellions function and stuff like that. I thought it was pretty cool. I don't know if I was going to say it's better than The Walking Dead, obviously, because The Walking Dead's ran a little bit longer than this. I'm not sure. This doesn't function so much on how people are. It spends a lot more time on certain characters, and it kind of just winks at the rest of the world. And so you really spend more time with the development of these particular characters than you do with like, here's a group and here's how the group dies off and dealing with that. Again, Walking Dead has a lot more time. I might as well address a few things, and since I'm a Christian prude, I'll say this is weird. So one of my favorite episodes and my least favorite episode is all combined, and I think it's episode 3, and it has Nick Offerman, and he's straight up a prepper. Like he's and this is why I liked it, because I like that they brought him in. He's already against the government. He's super libertarian. The government's coming in and bringing people into camps that they're going to eventually slaughter. He knows it. He's in his basement. He's got guns and food. He's super prepped. He's ready to grow his own vegetables. And sure enough, the government leaves and he comes out and he sets up like a fortress. And he's got traps and he's alone. And he's just straight up going hardcore Ancapistan. And it's straight up survival on his own, prepper kind of thing. And I love it. And it's Nick Offerman. So it really felt Ron Swanson-y. Still one of my favorite, and I'll actually go into deep on this because, again, I'm a Christian prude. So I'll say a few things. So he eventually meets a guy, and of course, they're gay. Both of them end up being gay. Doesn't see anybody else in the world. Sure. First guy he sees in like 5 years is a gay guy. Just so happens he's gay. Storytelling 101, right? Either way, they form a relationship. It's good storytelling. They do it well. Despite what you feel about the whole gay thing, that's actually not my issue. And I actually stem this back to Lord of the Rings. I'll just be earmuff the kids. They get very sexual with it. Not very, but like enough to where they spend an over amount of time on the sexual part of it. And I just kind of went through and was like, well, let's move forward on this. Because it's the 21st century. It's Hollywood. It is what it is. But I'll be honest, I even with the Lord of the Rings, I'll tell you a little bit of story. So I love Lord of the Rings, and I love the fact that they're even the first 3, the Peter Jackson 3, off the books. This is going to sound really weird. They keep the romantic relationships to a bare minimum in Lord of the Rings. You have like Aragorn and Liv Tyler, and you have that, but it's kind of sentimental. It's kind of like will they, won't they, but they can't because she's an elf and he's Aragorn, and it focuses much more on the journey, the mission, trying to save the world, right? That doesn't really spend so much time on being like, I want to save the world, but we're in love. And so I might just be that kind of guy, like, leave the rom-com at home. Let's get to the war scene and, the battle of Helm's Deep. That's what I want to see. So I've always been that way. And then even when The Hobbit came out and Legolas had his relationship and The Hobbit, and I understand, like, I get it. They're trying to spread to a large audience. So, uh, and even like it's good storytelling to have romantic relationships in the middle of turmoil. It's a bit of a sign of being human. You just because there's a war doesn't mean you forget the people you love back home, your spouse. There being human is very complicated. There's a lot of things, very artistic to be able to dive into multiple different realms at once. Especially being in The Last of Us, being a survivalist, being on your own. You find somebody you connect with. Sure, full, but the overly done sexual part could have done without. But again, it's Hollywood. What do you expect? Um, Still, really cool story. The only thing I have with that is I wish they would have spent more time building those characters. You get one episode with Nick Offerman's character and the other guy, I don't know his actor's name. It's Bill and Frank. You get one episode with them of telling their story over the years, the whole years of the whole outbreak all the way through. And you kind of get winked at in the episodes before who these guys were. But basically, they were supplying a quarantine zone with stuff that they couldn't get in there. The rebels that were inside the quarantine zone. And they had a whole system, which they dip into. And this actually complaint lasts throughout the whole season. But there's a whole thing. And I thought it was really cool that they don't spend much time on. Like the way they navigate and the way they barter things from the city over to where they are and back and forth. I thought that was a really neat concept. Especially as a storyteller, these are things you think about. I love that stuff. I love that in-depth, like, well, how does economics work? How does smuggling work? How does this work? Like, I love that stuff. Which, and I'll say this again, they probably do in the game. No idea. Anyway, one of my favorite episodes, one of my least favorite episodes for the raunchiness. Just because again, Christian Prude, I don't need raunchy. I'd much rather see more shooting of mushroom-filled zombies. Like, I'm cool with that. That's just my forte. If you're into the raunchy, then I'm sure there's a whole internet out there for you. So moving on, I liked. I have one. So I'm just going to jump from episode to episode, just because I'm sure, hopefully, you've watched this. But there is an episode where the girl, the main little girl, again, she's gay too. Just a heads up. She's gay too. That's the whole basis of it. She has a best friend who's a girl, and there, is what it is. She, I guess, likes her. But either way, that actually could care less about. The thing that bugged me the most about this episode was her friend is leaving. It's a big storyline. You find out how she gets bit and how she's immune and all that stuff. That's cool. She takes her to a mall, right? And it's a post-apocalypse. So it's a mall from 2003. It's 20 years later. It's 2023. She takes her into basically an untouched mall, right? The power's on. She rigs the breaker. Still don't understand the power concept and how everything has power in the post-apocalypse. Never mind. Goes to the mall, and she takes her to like these 5 wonders of the mall. There's a carousel. She takes her to a Halloween store. Takes her to an arcade. These are all cool. An escalator. I love the fact that she's flipping out like she's never seen an escalator before, so she's loving it. That's a cool. Like, I like that storytelling. The only problem I had with this is all of the episodes before it. They signal to how important this Walkman is that she has. Like, it's always the one thing she has. It carries that and like a pocket knife, and she, gets in trouble, and they take it, and she's like, "Can I have my Walkman back?" Right? It's a big thing. It's something that they always put in. They always kind of allude to, and so it's a bit of a smoking gun. You're like, okay, this is gonna play some kind of a part. They're winking at this one prop that I forgot what it's called. It's somebody's rifle, where they always show a rifle at the mantle. By the third act, someone's gonna pull their rifle down and use it. They go to a mall, right? 2003 mall. And not once do they visit like an FYE. They don't visit anything that has cassettes or vinyls or CDs. Nothing. And I'm like, the whole point of the Walkman is like, so you would go and be like, hey, pick out this. And then you could have added a cool soundtrack. She picked up like Van Halen. You could have that playing in the background. Royalties or something they wouldn't pay for. But still, they could have done that. And I thought that was I felt like they probably wrote it in. They're like, we don't have enough time. And they cut it out and left some weird sentimental scene. But sure, whatever. Still really good storytelling. I like that. Episode 8 might be really close to one of my favorites. It's the second. It's the one right before the season finale. I like that. I don't know if you saw it. This is the one where they have that one settlement, and it's a preacher guy, and he's kind of the lead of this commune. And you find out he's super evil, and they kind of tie into what happened the episode before, and it's a whole red herring. You think everyone thinks he's a good guy, but he ends up being super evil. I love that. I thought that was cool, almost because I didn't see it coming. How they're going to link episodes before, so I thought that was really cool episode. And then now we get to the season finale, which aired this past Sunday. I got a chance to watch it last night, and wonderful. I thought it was great. They really put some issues. You get to the end where they're trying to go. They finally get to their Mount Doom, and they put like I'm trying not to spoil it too much because it did recently come out, but they kind of put like this conundrum. So if you haven't seen it, I'm really trying to hold back on the spoilers on this one. So I'll just kind of blanket this. They really put this conundrum in front of you where you're like, what would I do in that situation? And they do a really good job of it. And not only that, they do a very artsy way of executing the last 20 minutes. Very good. Just cinematically, it's one of those scenes where it's super serious. It's a lot happening, but it's all the volume's low and the music's kind of over the top. So it's theatrical in what's happening, but it's something that you're like, oh my God, this is brutal. You start to liken. I kind of fought with the main character, the Pedro's Pascal Joel. I fought with him on this. Like I was like, I don't know where his morals lie a little bit, and I love that they really signified his dynamic of his character and where he keeps his priorities, which you were kind of not sure. So here's my only critique of the whole season, and I know it's not really much they could have done. That season needed to be way longer. It may have needed to be 2 seasons, and they should not have shoved it into one. And here's what I'll say, and I heard someone talk about this before. It was a video game, so you spend a ton of hours between these 2 main characters, the guy and the little girl, and the kind of father-daughter relationship of him traveling across country and keeping her safe. And at first, he's just like, we just need to get this job done. I don't really care about her. And then because it's only 9 episodes or like an hour long, you skip a ton of the detail. And so they're really trying to shove in like bits and pieces where they start to connect and where he really cares about her. And you start to see this a lot, but you don't really see how much she cares about him until it's towards the end. And then you get to the very end of the season and you're like, I know how we got here, but I feel like we skipped over a bunch. And the decisions he makes towards the end makes sense, but they felt weird. It just didn't feel like we spent enough time building their father-daughter relationship. And so he makes some pretty big dad moves in protecting and kind of keeping that principle forward. And you learn a little bit more about why she cares about him early on. And that one makes a lot more sense. He's pretty much keeping it going and trying to help her out. And episode 7 really goes into how much she relies on him, but he doesn't really have that same emotion. And this is episode 7. This is 2 episodes from the finale. He's struggling with like, I'm gonna let you do your own thing. I'm gonna go back to being me. And then 2 episodes later, you're like, wait, what happened? And he did what? So anyway, that was my only complaint. 2 episodes, drastic change in main character. Something happened in between. Coming to Jesus moment I missed. Maybe it happened, I just didn't pick up on it. Again, I'm not working for Netflix, HBO. I'm not working, so I'm not a writer for them, so I can't say much. But that was I give that one a 7 out of 10. Coming in completely unexpected. Never played the video game. 7 out of 10. Great series. Very Walking Dead reminiscent. I'm here for it. I'm super stoked for season 2. Whenever that comes back out. Man, they really had some cool scenes and some really cool moments in this series that were like, this is rad. Like it's very well done. Anyway, that's Last of Us. That's my thoughts on that. All right, let's get to the one that's ongoing. This one I don't have as much to talk about because there's only 2 episodes out of it. It's The Mandalorian. That guy right there. I'm here for it. I was here for it from day one. Here for it through Book of Boba Fett. When he showed up, I was like, Mandalorian 2.4 or whatever. Loved that. All for it. I thought they're going to play the whole Spoilers too, by the way. Grogu being with Luke Skywalker and training. I thought they're going to play that in a little bit more, but they kind of rushed through that. Later, I found out. My wife told me, she was like, that was supposed to be like 2 years he was away training with Luke. I didn't pick up on that. I think Dave Favreau mentioned that, so that was a big part. That was like, oh, this makes sense. And so this season 3 is off to a great start. I like how they keep changing. Oh, let me just step back real quick. One of the things about The Mandalorian that was fun, but it got kind of repugnant and repetitious. Like, oh, now we got to go on to this planet to get the thing I need. But before I get the thing I need, I have to help the citizen here. Very Western, obviously, because it's a Western. It's a space Western. But it was that every episode. It's like, oh, what planet are we going to next? And who are we trying to help to get to the next point? Kind of always been that way with The Mandalorian. I expected the same. Anyway, what I was going to say is Last of Us didn't do that. They rarely repeated an episode, same thing. It was always something different. It did not feel like I just watched the same episode, just rewritten with different characters. Didn't feel like that at all. Mandalorian does that a little bit. Still here for it. Love every minute of it. Never going to not love it. I mean, they could ruin it, but I don't think they will. Full faith in Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Anyway, off to a great start. There's not a lot going on, so I'm just going to point out some highlights that I enjoyed. I mean, not going on. He's trying to redeem himself with his, with his clan, the Watch, since he took his helmet off and revealed himself to Grogu and the rest of the people standing around him. He's no longer a part of his clan, which, if you don't know, the Mandalorians they're a bunch of clans, a part of the same group of people. So a bunch of tribes are part of the same thing, and they all kind of they have one creed, but they all kind of have their own thing. And his is like, you don't reveal your helmet, your face to anybody. So it's a big deal. So he does it. He's an apostate, and he's trying to get back to being in good graces. He got Grogu along with him. I'm not even sure why Grogu's there, other than it's Starsky and Hutch sidekicks now. Still a little bit of Lone Wolf and Cub, but it's Grogu. But he's been training with Luke, so now he's got he can like Jedi flip through the air the way Yoda used to do. So I'm super stoked with that. So I'm just going to point out some highlights. That's one of them. You start to realize that while he was with Luke, he definitely learned some Jedi stuff. And I kind of forgot about that. I was like, it kind of feels like the same Grogu, little cute little baby Yoda. No, got some pretty cool moves. A little bit more aware of what's going on. Knows how to get around. He got trained by Luke in the Force, and now he's kind of being trained by Mandalorian. Foreshadow, I think, by Din. Din's trained him to become a Mandalorian, so I think he's going to move into that realm. And I'll tell you a little bit about my thoughts on this. I think it's pretty well known. But before we go there, one big highlight. My wife loves it. I loved it. It might be one of my favorite scenes of all the Mandalorian, where they bought the little Babu Frick characters, the little tiny mechanics. He was in The Last Jedi, and I think that might be maybe something else, but he's the Babu Frick. He's a little guy working on C-3PO. They brought a bunch of them in, and they're working on a droid. And you got Baby Yoda runs up and just bear hugs him because he's the same size. And that whole scene is to die for. That is super cool. Got a dog barking. Anyway, that was a fun scene. The other thing was the big one that happened this last episode, the Mythosaur. So I'm not going to go so much into the Mythosaur. I'm not super that nerdy. I don't know much about it. But basically, the Mandalorians, the first Mandalorian, and this is where I'm linking to. First Mandalorian tamed this giant beast. It's the symbol of their whole Mandalorian thing. It's a giant beast with horns, and it's meant to be extinct. He tamed it first in conquering the planet Mandalore, thus starting the Mandalorians. I don't know if it's him or another character. Basically, half Jedi, half Mandalorian. So Jedi powers, creates the dark saber, which is we saw in the first season. It's basically a lightsaber, but it's black. Functions a little bit differently. Only one of its kind. And that thing is supposed to say to unify all the Mandalorians, because they're a bunch of different clans. Unifies them under one quote-unquote king who wields the sword, King Arthur style. This is where I think it's going to go. Oh, the Mythosaur shows up in the last episode. Spoiler alert. Awesome. Love it. Supposed to be extinct, and it's back. And it's super scary and mysterious. And so you got 3 main characters. So I'm going to go into theory time, because there wasn't much else to talk about. And it's a cool episode. Love what they're doing. Theory time. So they're bringing in, I think the whole concept this season is to unite the Mandalorians because they're all scattered across the universe. Their planet got blown up by the Empire. So what we're doing is trying to take all the clans, make them unite, probably for some far off war that's going to come. That's probably going to bring in Boba Fett, Ahsoka, because we know that series is coming out. This timeline, they're probably going to Avengers it up, all of them together in whatever series that I'm assuming they're doing a Marvel playbook because it's Disney. So they're all going to come together, fight a big bad, big war. But before that can happen, all the Mandalorians need to come together, and it's all going to be one thing. And so I think it depends on who's going to be. This is where I'm going to go. There's 3 main people I'm looking at to become the new Mandalorian king, queen, whatever. Your most obvious antagonist or protagonist, Din, the Mandalorian. He already has the Darksaber. He could be the one to tame the Mythosaurus and ride it like a Rancor or something. And he could unite. He would be your obvious pick. Unite all the Mandalorians together, right? So that would be your first pick. That's probably a good theory. Not bad. Bo-Katan, which is the other Mandalorian that's on the planet. She's actually the heiress of the last one who was the queen, I guess, her sister, and the family that used to unite all the Mandalorians. Pretty good one. She's wielded the Darksaber before, is very proficient in it, knows how to use it. And there's a whole thing about the sword kind of chooses you, kind of like Harry Potter and the wand chooses you. And it seems like she's got a good connection with the sword. So she could be it. She actually saw the Mythosaur. I don't think Mando did in that last scene. That would be the third theory. I'm not leaning towards that one. I don't know what they're going to do with her. I do think they're teeing up a kind of, not a will they, won't they kind of thing, but are they going to fight each other? Because there's some weird underlying tension between them. And so they're working together sometimes, and then sometimes they're not, and it seems to be some contention. So I think it's going to be like kind of like oh my god, Loki, where Sylvie and Loki are kind of fighting each other, but then they become friends, and then at the end they're kind of fighting each other again. I think they're going to pull that card. I really hope they don't just rewrite Marvel series in Star Wars, but still here for it. Last theory, and this is one I'm probably going to put my money on. Actually, I'm going to put my money on a few things, and I'll tell you about it. So hopefully I don't spoil it, because this isn't actually coming. I don't know if this is true. So hopefully it do not spoil this for you. If you don't want to know my theories, you probably should have turned it off and a while back. But I'm going to tell you mine anyway. Grogu. I think little baby Yoda, force sensitive like the first Mandalorian or that Mandalorian who created the Darksaber. He's being trained to become a Mandalorian, which is pretty easily done by Jen, right? He tamed the Rancor in like the Book of Boba, where he runs into it and the Rancor's eating people and he just like force tames him. Could easily tame a Mythosaur, ride it, which would be pretty cool. Little baby Yoda riding the Mythosaur. Plus, he's kind of the center of the whole point. Din is not much of a king character. He's a dad figure, kind of like that. I could totally see this thing teeing up little baby Yoda riding a Mythosaur with the Darksaber, uniting all the Mandalorians together. The other thing they did, and I think this is a little wink, wink, nod, nod. They showed a young kid being baptized into the Mandalorian creed, and they have like a specific little young kid's helmet. It looks similar to this, but it's just shaped different. The eye visor's a little bit bigger, kind of childlike. It's same thing, smaller, eye visor's bigger. I don't know how they're not going to make one for Baby Yoda. He's already got the Beskar chainmail. There is no way by the end of the season that Baby Yoda doesn't have a Mandalorian helmet. So I'm going to put my money on that one. This is where my theory goes. I think Baby Yoda by the end, wielding the Darksaber, flying on the Mythosaur, wearing a Mandalorian helmet, leading all the Mandalorians into the next big battle against Thrawn or something like that. The other thing people are talking about, because he's starting to talk a little bit more, little baby Yoda guy, they're like, he's going to say his quote unquote first words. No one's like, it's probably going to be like Mando or Din or something like that. I'm going to put my money on, because it's Yoda. And my wife was like, do you think he talks like Yoda, even though he's not been around yet? Guaranteed. I'm going to go and say that everything he says, this is why he's not talking yet. It's going to be just like Yoda, like do or do not. There's no try. Everything's kind of dyslexic, whatever. It's all backwards. Like the words are rearranged backwards. You know how Yoda talks. And so I think his last words will be the way this is. So this is the way, the big Mandalorian thing just flipped. So that'll probably be like the last scene. He is flying. Just picture this. Mandalorians come together. under King Grogu, Mandalorian helmet, Beskar chainmail, dark saber in one hand, probably be a little bit big. Maybe yes. It's a double wield. Two wield is lightsaber because it's a little bit bigger than his tiny hands. Riding the mythosaur that he's tamed, and they flap down. I don't even know if mythosaur has wings. Shows up in front of all the Mandalorians on Mandalore that's restored. They're all like, "We're going off to battle, being led by Grogu." And his last line is, "The way this is." And I think that'll be the end cutscene. Dun, 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 dun. And that's where I think it's going to go. Anyway, hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. Just want to get all this off my chest. Pop art review coming back on fire. I think I'm going to try to keep these up. These are a little bit more difficult because I'm by myself and there's not a lot coming out. Not a lot of there's content, but I don't get around to watching all. It's one of the reasons why I didn't do it sooner. It's because I was like, well, I kind of want to wrap up. I almost did it last week, but I was like, I want to wait one episode from The Last of Us. I'll wait to the season finale. Quantumania was a while ago. I could have done one episode of Quantumania, but it'd been like 10 minutes, or it would have been 10 minutes and then 30 minutes of me complaining about the last, phase 4 and how much of a disappointment it was. But I was like, let's hold off. So I think I'd like to do this often. I just don't know if they'll be weekly. I would like to have some guests. Maybe I'll have some guests. But here's what I need from you. I'm going to obviously review Mandalorian. Just don't know. I might just wait for a few episodes to come out, maybe 2, and then do it. It's not that difficult. If I got some time, like a Saturday, I'll sit down and do it. Or if I have a guest, then maybe we'll sit there and chat about it. And then maybe talk about whatever they recently watching. I know I've one of my friends who's going to come on as guest loves Star Trek. Not a fan. You probably heard those episodes before. Not a fan of Star Trek, but he can talk about that. Maybe I can pick on him because how awful Star Trek is. But yeah, I would like to review more stuff, but I don't also know exactly what to review. And I don't really pay attention to what everyone's talking about. I'm kind of off the wagon. I'm still the one guy in the world who's never seen Game of Thrones. Oops. So I'm not fully connected to all the pop, even though I have a podcast and I'm doing a pop art review, I'm not fully connected to all the cultural cool stuff to watch. So if you have something like, you know what, this is a cool movie, I watch this, it's off the wall, you find it on Amazon Prime in the back corner, Wishmaster from like 1985, go watch that and tell me what you think. Oh, I love horror too, so probably be a lot. I just finished rewatching Haunting a Hill House. It's not even Halloween, and I watched the whole series. I probably should have been watching something relevant, like 1923 or whatever that. Instead, I was watching Haunting a Hill House. Still one of my favorite scary series is anyway, write in a comment in the YouTube video, comment or the Rumble, or hit me up on Instagram or back message me, email me at pardonwillartistry@gmail.com. Like, I want you to review this. One thing I did think about, because I know a lot of my friends and family love, and obviously prude Christian over here, they've been loving the Chosen series. I've never been a super big fan of stuff like that. I think the last hardcore Christian historical piece that I watched was Mel Gibson's Passion of Christ, like 20 years ago or whatever. I thought about watching that, and maybe I'll do a review of that. I'm trying to think if there's anything that you think it would be fun to review. Obviously, if it's going to be Marvel, Star Wars, I'm already on top of that. If it's something that maybe off the wall I don't know about, then just message me, put it in the comments. Other than that, I'll keep my ear to the grindstone and maybe come up with something, or I'll just regurgitate some of the other stuff that I did like, because I never mentioned Moon Knight, the series from Disney, the Marvel series Moon Knight, one of the best ones ever, very top tier for me. Loved Moon Knight. I could probably rant about that, actually. I don't think I've done that yet. Probably might want to do that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope you had a great time hanging out with me. Hope this keeps you entertained during the week. And follow me on Instagram. It's Pardonable Podcast. And on Twitter, it's Pardonable Art. You can follow my personal on Instagram as well as Pardonable Art. Matter of fact, just follow me on Pardonable Art. And then there's I have a whole separate Instagram for the podcast to post episodes where I keep my personal, like more like an art gallery style. I talked about that in another episode, so it doesn't matter. Follow me on those. Follow like the notification button on YouTube and Rumble. They'll tell you when I come up with videos. That's always cool. Makes me look cool with subscribers and stuff. If I get more subscribers, I might just start throwing commercials in this thing And then if I start throwing commercials, then I'll start getting some change tossed to me. And if I get change tossed to me, I'll be more incentivized to do more of these. And I'll tell you about how much I liked Lord the Hobbit up until the romantic stuff. And then I'll be like, this is where they lost me. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of rom-coms. Actually, I'm trying to think of one rom-com that I liked. Yeah, wow. That might actually say something about me. Not a fan. Every time I keep thinking of a rom-com, I don't think it's actually a rom-com. It's just a comedy. Yep. As a matter of fact, the comedy would have been funnier if it wasn't romantic. Dang, that's rough. Anyway, glad you guys tuned in. I will see you guys here next week with another guest, another episode, and we're going to have a great time. Oh, before I get charity of the month, lucasfund.com. I've been talking about them for a month now. You can go to lucasfund.com. Share this up so you can see it. And help them out. Lucas actually got adopted to a family we're good friends with. They go to our church, and we've been I've known them for a really long time, and a great family. And they foster, and they end up fostering and adopting Lucas. And Lucas has got some developmental issues and some things that he has to deal with through his life. Wheelchair, stuff like that, and they need to build a ramp. They need to be able to add some things onto their house and just kind of prep to make his life a little bit easier for them too, because they're really doing the Lord's work. I mean, I know that's a cliche, the Lord's work thing, but they really are doing the Lord's work. I really think that's an important thing for people that do. I just find it really inspiring. Anyway, that's the charity of the month. I'm sorry I waited to the very end. If you're still listening to this, kudos to you. But anyway, I'm going to sign off now. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you back here next week. Bye.